She never expected her quiet night at a crowded restaurant to change her life forever. Doris, a simple young woman with a broken past, sat alone until a stranger in a sharp suit asked to share her table. His name was Mickelson, a billionaire hiding loneliness behind his wealth. What began as small talk soon turned into confessions of pain, second chances, and the spark of a love that defied fear. This is not just a love story. It's a heartwarming reminder that kindness and courage can change destinies. Stay with us. This story will melt your heart. The golden glow of the restaurant lights fell softly over polished wooden tables and sparkling glasses of wine. The clinking of silverware blended with gentle laughter, and the air was rich with the scent of garlic bread and roasted tomatoes. Every table was full, families chatting, couples leaning close, friends raising toasts. But at one corner table sat Doris, completely alone. Her delicate fingers traced the rim of her glass, her mind far away from the cheerful noise. Her blue eyes, though beautiful, carried the dull weight of disappointment. Just that morning, she had received another rejection email. The dream job she had prayed for slipped away, and along with it, her confidence. She had almost canceled the dinner. But something inside her told her she couldn't sit at home in silence tonight. She needed the comfort of human noise, even if she wasn't a part of it. Still, she couldn't escape the harsh words of her stepmother, spoken like venom earlier that week. "You'll never be good enough, Doris. You'll always be a burden." The words stung like knives. She hated that they followed her even here, in a room full of strangers. She lifted her glass of water and tried to swallow the lump in her throat, forcing a small smile so no one would see her sadness. But her loneliness was louder than the music playing softly in the background. And then it happened. A shadow fell across her table. She looked up, startled, her heartbeat quickening as if her soul sensed something extraordinary. Before her stood a man, tall and commanding, dressed in a sharp black suit that seemed tailored perfectly for him. His presence alone drew glances from other diners, though he didn't seem to notice. His piercing gray eyes met hers, and in them she saw not arrogance, but something unexpected, tiredness, and maybe even sorrow. His voice was deep, smooth, and strangely calming. "Excuse me," he said, leaning slightly toward her. "There are no free tables left. May I sit with you?" For a second, Doris froze. No man had ever approached her this way, gentle, respectful, and yet with a quiet authority that demanded attention. Her mind raced. Should I say no? He's a stranger. He could be anyone. But her heart betrayed her. It skipped, fluttering as if whispering, "Say yes." She glanced at the crowded room, at people laughing in groups, at couples sharing secret smiles, and then back at him, this mysterious man who stood alone just like her. Her lips curved into a soft, almost nervous smile. "Sure, you can sit." The man slid gracefully into the chair across from her. The faintest scent of cedar and clean cologne reached her, pulling her deeper into his presence. And at that moment, Doris felt something shift inside her. She couldn't explain it, but it was as though the air had thickened, charged with a suspense she had never known. Her loneliness had summoned a stranger, but not just any stranger, someone who carried mystery in his eyes, someone who seemed to bring fate itself to her table. Little did she know this single choice, allowing him to sit, would not only change her night, but her entire life. Fate had just sat down across from her, dressed in a dark suit and wearing the name Mickelson. The man sat with a quiet composure, as if he was used to drawing eyes wherever he went. Yet he didn't seem interested in the stares that followed him. He only focused on Doris. "My name is Mickelson," he said at last, his voice carrying a weight of authority but softened with warmth. Doris repeated the name silently in her mind. Mickelson. It was sharp, elegant, and seemed to belong to someone important. She smiled politely, though a flicker of curiosity ran through her. Who was this man, really? And why did she feel a strange calm in his presence? Around them, waiters rushed by, trays clinking with wine glasses and plates of steaming pasta. People whispered and stole glances, some even leaning in to get a better look at him. Clearly, he was not an ordinary man. He had the aura of someone powerful, someone who carried the world on his shoulders. But what surprised Doris most was that he wasn't arrogant. His suit was expensive, his watch gleamed, his posture flawless. Yet he seemed grounded, strangely human. They ordered food, but conversation didn't come immediately. Instead, silence settled between them. Doris picked at her bread roll nervously, glancing up every so often, while Mickelson studied her quietly, as if reading a book no one else had ever taken the time to open. Finally, after what felt like forever, Mickelson leaned forward. His gray eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment she forgot to breathe. Then he spoke. "You remind me of someone I lost a long time ago." The words sliced through the air like a secret not meant to be told. Doris blinked, her fork clinking against her plate. Her heart jolted. "Lost?" she whispered, her voice almost breaking. "Yes." His gaze didn't waver, but the shadows in his eyes deepened. His voice was low, almost trembling with something unspoken. "Someone who trusted me when I didn't deserve it. She gave me her faith, and I broke it. Sitting here with you tonight, it feels like the past is giving me another chance." Doris felt her throat tighten. She didn't know him. They had exchanged barely a handful of words. Yet in that instant, she felt his pain, raw, heavy, and unbearably real. She should have excused herself, should have stood up and walked away from this stranger who spoke as if he knew her soul. That would have been the logical thing to do. But logic couldn't compete with the rhythm of her heart, and her heart whispered only one word: stay. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed them in her lap. Why did his confession feel like it was meant for her? Why did she, a woman who often felt invisible, suddenly feel seen in a way she never had before? For the first time in years, someone wasn't looking at her beauty or her failures. They were looking past everything, straight into who she was. The room around them seemed a blur, the noise fading until only their breaths filled the space between them. It wasn't the typical conversation between strangers. It was deeper, rawer, like two souls brushing against one another, recognizing something familiar in the dark. Doris felt a storm swirl inside her. Suspense twisted with tenderness, fear tangled with longing. She wanted to know more, yet she feared what knowing might cost. And still, she didn't move. She couldn't. She stayed. Because for the first time, sitting across from this mysterious man, she felt like her lonely table wasn't lonely anymore. The night deepened, but neither Doris nor Mickelson seemed to notice. Plates were cleared, fresh glasses of wine arrived, and still their conversation stretched on, weaving a fragile thread between two souls who hours ago had been strangers. Doris leaned forward slightly, her curiosity growing. "So, what do you do, Mickelson?" He hesitated, as if the question carried more weight than it should. Then, with quiet honesty, he replied, "I'm in the hotel business. Resorts, properties, luxury chains. It's what I've built my life around." Doris blinked. The way he said it was casual, almost dismissive, but the truth behind his words was enormous. This wasn't just a man in business. This was someone who had built an empire, a billionaire. She studied him in silence for a moment, trying to connect the image of the mysterious man across from her with the powerful title he carried. Yet what struck her wasn't his wealth. It was the loneliness in his tone, a loneliness no amount of money could hide. Mickelson's eyes grew distant, as if he were staring into a memory that still hurt to touch. "Years ago," he began slowly, "I had someone, a woman who believed in me. She loved me before the money, before the empire. She gave me her heart, and I broke it." Doris's lips parted, but no words came. "My obsession with success blinded me," he continued, his voice rougher now. "I wanted more More hotels, more deals, more recognition. And in chasing it all, I lost the only thing that ever really mattered. She walked away, and I didn't stop her. I thought I could fill the emptiness with achievements. But the truth is, he lowered his gaze, his hands tightening around his glass. I've never stopped eating alone in crowded rooms. The confession settled heavy in the air, pressing against Doris's heart. For so long, she had imagined powerful men as untouchable, men who never bent, never broke. But sitting before her was a man who had everything people dreamed of, and yet his soul carried cracks deep enough to swallow him whole. Her chest tightened painfully. He wasn't showing her his empire, he was showing her his wounds, and that vulnerability struck her more deeply than any wealth ever could. Quietly, she whispered, "Nobody really knows you, do they?" Mickelson gave a faint, bitter smile. "No. They know my name, my money, my success. But me?" His eyes lifted back to hers, raw and searching. "No one really sees me." The words pierced Doris's heart because, in their own way, they mirrored her own life. Most people only saw her soft smile, her beauty, the surface. Few bothered to notice the weight she carried, the constant rejection, the cruel words of a stepmother who cut her down at every chance. Before she realized what she was doing, her own pain spilled out. "I know how that feels," she confessed. Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. "People look at me and think I have it all together, but inside—" She paused, swallowing hard. "Inside, I feel like I'm never enough. Every dream slips away, every door closes, and I hear the same words again and again. You're not good enough." Her eyes stung with unshed tears. She quickly lowered her gaze, embarrassed for revealing so much to a man she barely knew. But Mickelson didn't judge her. He didn't dismiss her pain. Instead, his expression softened as if her honesty had touched something sacred inside him. And for a moment, the world outside that restaurant disappeared. Two strangers sat across from each other, but their hearts were no longer strangers. They carried fragments of each other now, his loneliness resting in her chest, her wounds reflected in his eyes. It was dangerous, this connection that grew so quickly, yet it was undeniable. Suspense and tenderness mingled in the space between them, whispering of something deeper neither dared to name. The plates had been cleared, the last sip of wine long gone, yet neither Doris nor Mickelson felt ready to part ways. Time had slipped away inside that little Italian restaurant, but the connection they had built in such a short while felt too alive, too unfinished to end there. Mickelson rose first, pushing back his chair with quiet confidence. He reached out a hand to her, not commanding but inviting. "Walk with me," he said gently, his deep voice carrying something almost irresistible. Doris hesitated for half a heartbeat, then placed her hand in his. His touch was firm yet careful, as though he was afraid to hold her too tightly. Together, they stepped out into the Chicago night. The city was alive with 1,000 golden lights glowing from shops, street lamps, and passing cars. The air was warm, carrying hints of roasted chestnuts from a vendor on the corner and the faint perfume of summer blossoms carried on the breeze. The world outside buzzed with noise and life, yet strangely, it felt as if they were the only two people walking those streets. Doris adjusted the strap of her purse nervously, her heels clicking softly against the pavement. Then, clumsy fate intervened. Her heel caught in a crack in the sidewalk, and she stumbled forward with a small gasp. Before she could fall, Mickelson's hand was there, steadying her with instinctive swiftness. His palm pressed against hers, his other hand brushing her elbow, holding her upright. The moment should have ended with a quick laugh and a polite thank you. But it didn't. The touch lingered. Their eyes met in the soft glow of the street lamp. Doris's breath caught in her chest. The distance between them felt charged, heavy with something unspoken. Mickelson's gray eyes, which had earlier seemed so shadowed with pain, now burned with something else, something that made her knees weaken. "Doris," he whispered, his voice softer now, almost breaking. "I don't know why fate put me at your table tonight, but it feels like I was meant to find you." The words slid straight into her heart, breaking down the walls she had built for years. No one had ever spoken to her with such sincerity, such raw honesty. Men in her past had spoken of her beauty, but none had spoken to her soul. Her breath hitched, trembling. She wanted to speak, but no words came. She could only stare back at him, her lips parting slightly, her heartbeat thundering in her chest. The city noise seemed to fade, swallowed by the quiet intensity between them. For the first time in years, Doris didn't feel invisible. She didn't feel overlooked or unworthy. In Mickelson's gaze, she felt seen, completely, deeply seen. A soft laugh escaped her, half nervous, half overwhelmed. "You speak as if we were meant to cross paths," she whispered. Mickelson's hand still held hers, strong and steady. His eyes softened as he leaned just slightly closer, enough that she felt the warmth of his presence. "That's exactly what I believe," he murmured. "Because when I look at you, Doris, it doesn't feel like meeting a stranger. It feels like remembering someone I was always meant to know." Her heart fluttered violently, torn between fear and surrender. She didn't know what tomorrow held, didn't know if trusting him was wise. But standing under the golden glow of the city lights, with his words wrapping around her like a promise, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. And as they walked on, hand still in hand, the night no longer felt like an ordinary night. It felt like the beginning of something extraordinary. The night wrapped around them like a velvet curtain, the hum of the city blending into a distant murmur. For a moment, Doris thought her heart might burst from the emotions that burned inside her. His hand in hers felt like an anchor, pulling her closer to a world she had never dared to imagine. But then, fear crept in. That sharp, familiar voice inside her head whispered reminders of who she was: ordinary, overlooked, unimportant. Her breath faltered. Slowly she pulled her hand back, her fingers slipping from his warmth. She needed space to breathe, to think. Mickelson's brows furrowed, confusion flickering in his gray eyes. "Doris?" he asked softly, his voice carrying a note of concern. She hugged her arms around herself as if shielding her heart. "You're a billionaire, Mickelson," she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of doubt. "And I'm just me, a woman who can barely hold her life together. What happens when you realize I can't give you the glamorous world you're used to?" Her words trembled in the night air. They felt like shards of glass, sharp, painful, and yet too true to ignore. For a long moment, he said nothing. The golden glow from a street lamp caught the edges of his face, highlighting the storm in his expression. Then, slowly, Mickelson stepped closer. His presence surrounded her, not suffocating but steady and firm, like a shield against her fears. His eyes darkened, not with anger but with an intensity that made her shiver. "Do you think I want another glamorous world?" His voice was deep, fierce, and filled with conviction. "That world is empty, Doris. Do you hear me? Empty. I've lived it, drowned in it, suffocated in it. Money fills your pockets, but it never fills your heart." Her lips parted, but no words came. Mickelson lifted a hand, hesitated, then gently brushed his fingers along her cheek, as if afraid she might break. "I don't want another trophy. I don't need another sparkling party. What I need is someone who makes me feel alive again. And tonight." His thumb lingered softly against her skin, his voice breaking into a whisper. "That someone is you." Doris's breath hitched. Her body trembled as her defenses wavered. Could she believe him? Could she risk everything she was guarding so tightly? Her heart screamed yes, but her mind warned no. The tension between fear and longing tore her apart. The city sounds, the honk of distant cars, the laughter from passing strangers, the faint music from a cafe nearby, faded into nothing. All she could hear was the pounding of her own heart and the steady rhythm of his voice. They stood so close, yet the space between them felt like a cliff's edge. One step forward could mean falling into something terrifying. But maybe, just maybe, it could also mean falling into something beautiful. Her eyes lifted to meet his, searching, trembling. And in his gaze, she didn't see wealth, power, or arrogance. She saw a man stripped of his armor, offering her his vulnerability, his truth. And though fear still lingered, something inside her shifted, like a door opening in the dark. Because for the first time in her life, Doris realized that maybe she was enough. Weeks turned into months, and what began as a fleeting encounter in a crowded Italian restaurant transformed into something that even fairy tales would envy. Doris often looked back at that night, wondering how fate had dared to place a billionaire at her humble table. She never thought she'd let him stay. She never thought he would stay. But Mickelson did. Not as a man flaunting his power, not as someone searching for a distraction, but as someone who, for the first time, longed for something real. He didn't take her to glittering galas or parade her in diamond-draped halls. Instead, he found joy in stepping into her world. He helped her cook simple meals in her small kitchen, where laughter spilled louder than any music at his grand parties. He walked beside her through narrow park trails, where autumn leaves crunched beneath their steps, where the world felt small yet infinite because they were together. At night, when fear still tried to creep into Doris's heart, Mickelson held her hand until it stilled. "I'm not letting go," he would whisper. And slowly she began to believe him. Doris brought something into his life that his billions never could: peace. She brought laughter that healed his silence, warmth that filled the cold halls of his mansion, and a home that didn't exist in walls or ceilings, but inside her heart. Society whispered, of course. People questioned. Some scoffed at the idea of a billionaire lowering himself into the ordinary. But Mickelson didn't flinch. Every time those whispers rose, he squeezed Doris's hand tighter and walked forward without a glance back. Because love, real love, doesn't ask for approval. One evening, fate led them back to that same Italian restaurant where everything began. The candlelight flickered between them, casting golden shadows on their faces. Doris smiled nervously, remembering how different her world had been that first night, how lonely, how guarded, how uncertain. And then Mickelson reached across the table, his strong hand enveloping hers. His eyes softened, shimmering with the weight of truth. "That night," he whispered, voice trembling with emotion, "you allowed a stranger to sit at your table." His thumb brushed across her knuckles, warm and steady. "But today, I am no stranger. I am the man who belongs to you, forever." The words wrapped around her heart, melting every wall she had built. Tears filled Doris's eyes, blurring the candlelight into stars. Her lips trembled, but her smile broke through like dawn. In a world obsessed with status, wealth, and divisions, their love became more than just theirs. It became a quiet rebellion, a whisper against the noise of judgment, a reminder that true worth isn't measured by money or power, but by kindness, trust, and the courage to love without fear. That night, two souls who came from opposite worlds showed what society often forgets, that love doesn't care about class, background, or labels. And in that lesson, Doris and Mickelson didn't just find romance. They found a forever home in each other's hearts. Because in the end, it wasn't wealth that made them rich. It was love, pure, simple,